Thanks for joining us this evening for our conversation for Marina by Marina, discussing the coastal access and amenities plan. Let's go ahead and go to the next slide. I just want to note before we proceed that we are recording this conversation this evening for transparency purposes and public outreach and education purposes. A recording of this will be made available on the city's website at cityofmarina.org/for-marina-by-marina for viewing later. So feel free to reshare this content as you see fit. Go to the next slide. And let's get to introductions. So who is this mysterious voice? My name is Ryder Smith. I have a firm called Trippepi Smith, and we do public outreach and engagement work for well over 100 cities in the great state of California. Marina is actually a client I've enjoyed the opportunity to get to know in the past, in the Marina community. We were involved in community outreach meetings during the redistricting process and had collaborated then with Lane. So it's good to be back in Marina and collaborating with the wonderful community that it is this evening. I'm joined tonight by two important folks that work at the city to help make Marina a great community. Lane Long and Guido, is it Persicone?
Persicone.
Yeah. Persicone. I should know this. I'm married to a Trippepi, so you know. Real quick, Guido, why don't you introduce yourself? And I just caught you as you were shoving some food in your mouth. That's awesome. I'll give Lane, you go first. Lane, introduce yourself. What do you do for the city?
Sure. Thank you, Ryder. I'm Lane Long. I'm the city manager of Marina. Been here for 12 years, and we have a lot of projects going on. We have a lot of public outreach going on, and we don't want the public to be confused with this. We have general plan outreach going on. We have local coastal program. We have parks outreach. We have budget meetings, a lot of different things. And this is just another public outreach on really an important issue as far as getting community input regarding this community engagement plan that Ryder will get involved with or explain a little bit more detail later on. But this is really important to us as the city that the city really gives the opportunity for the residents to talk to us, not talk to CalAm, not talk to CalAm's paid consultants, but talk to the city so that the city council can make some decisions about how we spend our resources for our community and not CalAm make decisions on how to spend resources in our community.
Yep. And I'll have some additional slides and details to cover some of those as well, so we can really be thorough and transparent in answering some questions from the public. And then Guido, what do you do at the city?
I'm the community development director, so planning, building, code enforcement, and I've been doing several housing policy initiatives as well. So that's what
All right. Well, thank you both for your service to Marina. Let's go to the next slide. So tonight, our goals are to share information about the Coastal Access and Amenities Plan, and which is really why we're here. We're going to discuss the potential $3 million payout from California American Water Company, otherwise you all know it as CalAm, to the city, and what possible uses those funds could yield. We would like to answer your questions, and we'll open up the Q&A a bit later to address your questions before we get into receiving public feedback. And then we will be in a feedback phase where we would like to hear from you about various ideas for how to deploy the $3 million if ultimately the desalination plant is built and this $3 million payment is directed towards the city to make investments in infrastructure and amenities for the community. So that's tonight's priority. We want to provide some background information, empower you with knowledge, give you a chance to ask questions, and then transition into hearing from you about feedback on some of these priorities. Let's go to the next slide. So consistent with that, we have about 20 minutes of presentation we want to do, and then we're going to go into the Q&A. It may go 30 minutes. It may go 2 minutes, depends on how many questions we have. And then as soon as that's over, we're going to segue into feedback session, and we'll go up to 45 minutes to get through our feedback session and make sure you all have a chance to provide feedback to us this evening. And just keep in mind, too, that we are recording. So when our feedback session is going to allow you to come off mic and express yourself. And so we'll have that a recording audio of that. And we have some staff members that are taking copious notes in the background as well. And go to the next slide, please. So just a note too, that if you have questions you wish to ask, you merely have to look at the bottom of your screen, and there should be a little Q&A icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You can click that icon and submit your question, and then we'll work our way of getting through those questions when we get to the Q&A phase of the evening. So I'm guessing many of you are veterans of the Zoom world these days, so you know how to use it, but just in case, look for that icon at the bottom of your screen, and you'll be able to submit questions in writing to us. Let's go to the next slide. So to Lane's comment earlier, why are we here? Well, in 2022, the California Coastal Commission approved a coastal development permit for CalAm's desalination project. I will just note this was done over the objections and opposition of the City of Marina and what had been years of pushing hard against that potential development. But despite the city's best efforts and yeoman efforts, both through standard processes and legal processes, it was approved by the Coastal Commission. Of note, there is still pending litigation on behalf of the city, trying to fend off the development of the desalination plant. So in addressing this tonight, in no way is the city conceding that particular legal effort on their side. However, it is also appropriate and important to plan contingencies, which would include addressing what is referred to as Article 17 or Condition 17 of the approval that the Coastal Commission granted when they granted approval of the desalination plant. That Condition 17 does require CalAm to submit a community engagement plan to the Coastal Commission for the coastal amenities plan. And then that community engagement plan would ultimately result in a $3 million payment to the city for implementation, if and only if the desal project is ever built. So I am sure there's some folks on the call this evening who are maybe in favor of the desal plant, in which case they're excited about a potential $3 million. There may be people on this call that are adamantly opposed to the desal plant, and they'd rather never get the $3 million because they would prefer the desal plant not arrive. Tonight's conversation is not debating or trying to solve for what to do about the desal plant. It is really focused on if ultimately the desal plant comes to be, how can we best direct the $3 million to yield the best benefits in the interest of the marina community? Let's go to the next slide. So just continuing on with some points, some important points here. As part of that outreach plan that the California Coastal Commission requested, the CalAm did engage a outreach firm called EnviroGauge to fulfill its community outreach requirement. And they have been actively at this for a couple months now, and have already held a couple meetings. And those are ongoing. They'll be ongoing through early April. However, the City of Marina was concerned that that plan being funded by and led by a resource and contractor who worked for CalAm might not be yielding the best outreach efforts and conclusions that would be in the interest of the City of Marina and Marina residents. And as such, the City of Marina wanted to launch its For Marina by Marina effort to talk directly to residents, the ones that your council has been elected to serve, your city government structure, the government closest to the people, to talk with them through our own outreach process. And then the city turned around and asked my firm to get involved and help lead that effort. So we've been going fast on this project. So ultimately, we've launched our own independent engagement effort For Marina by Marina that is designed to ensure authentic resident feedback is collected and shared to the city council. And then ultimately, once it's all gathered up, it'll be put together in a formal report, shared with your Marina City Council. And that will be then submitted to the California Coastal Commission in mid-April for its consideration as it's debating how it will deploy the $3 million or what potential projects could be funded by the $3 million. So this is really the city's way of ensuring that the authentic voice of Marina residents, supported by Marina's elected council and ultimately city staff who work for you as Marina residents, are the ones that are helping make sure your voice is represented to the California Coastal Commission. Lane, did I aptly summarize that, or do you have anything I missed that you would like to add?
Yeah, there's one point. Initially, you had said that CalAm had received a coastal development permit, was approved, and it was not approved. They received conditional approval. They have 100 well, they have 20 conditions that they have to meet. And the city does not believe that these conditions can be met, which is why we don't believe this plant will ever be built at this point. That's why we requested that the Coastal Commission and CalAm not move forward with this community engagement process just because it was unnecessary. It is irrelevant until these key issues are decided, whether or not that plant can even be built. But CalAm still want to move forward with this process, and so that is why we're doing it. But the desal plant only has conditional approval at this point, and it doesn't make sense. It's very premature to be doing this whole process, but they're moving forward, and so we have to do our efforts now on our end.
Fair enough. And thank you for bringing clarity to that important word of conditionally approved. You are correct. It was indeed a conditional improvement. Item 17 is one of several conditions, as you just noted. But I appreciate the clarity on the fact that many of the other elements of the conditional approval are not viewed as viable by the city, and therefore it is all for naught.
And one of the point I wanted to make is a requirement was that this is supposed to be a neutral process by EnviroGauge. And it's become very confusing because there are multiple links on their site that take it directly back to CalAm's website, and that's hugely problematic. There's nothing neutral about that. We've brought that up before, and so that may be confusing to the public if they're going to their website and find out it's end up in CalAm website. That should not be happening, but it is.
Okay. But to your point, we are here this evening, making sure that we give ample opportunity for residents in the community to share their viewpoints and concerns, specifically about how this $3 million might be allocated. Again, we know there's lots of concerns about the desalination plant, and we will do our best to answer some questions that if somebody hasn't had that answer before, we'll talk about that as part of our Q&A. But ultimately, when it comes to the feedback we're looking for tonight, it's really going to be about how we direct that $3 million should ultimately that payment be made or that condition have to be fulfilled, and the city finds itself with $3 million to help direct towards an amenity. Now, let's go to the next slide real quick, because I think there's lots of questions about what exactly is the scope and potential uses for those funds. And we'd like to clarify some of that as well for the benefit of the community. So ultimately, the efforts and the deployment is most likely focused on the coastal blue zone. It's the blue area you see in this map. And we will make this PowerPoint deck available as well in a PDF format to download on the Forest Bias webpage. For Marina by Marina webpage. The funds must ultimately go toward improving public access, public facilities, recreational opportunities, and restoration. This is consistent with generally the goals and objectives of the California Coastal Commission, what they see as their calling and obligation to the community, to all of California. And the city has identified some top sites and projects in the coastal zone based on previously identified community goals and priorities. So as we heard, the city has lots of ongoing outreach and communication engagement efforts going on to talk to the public about issues. Those efforts have previously yielded some likely spots where there's some projects that could be benefit from a $3 million injection of capitals and fund. And so we'd like to elevate some of those as possible consideration, but not the limitation of how we want to hear from you this evening. All right, so let's go to the next slide. And so there we have this concept of priority one sites, which deal with beach access. And we have a map here. Again, I know it's pretty small on the screen to read. We'll have the PowerPoint deck available to see, but some of these names may be quite familiar to you. But the general point of beach access, there's the CMEX property, the Dunes Drive, and Lake Court. There's parking upgrades that could be potentially done, beach access and trail improvements to help either navigate along the beach or get through the dunes successfully to the beach. There's environmental restoration work that can be done that could help either preserve the beach or preserve the visuals or save the sand breaks and the dunes themselves to prevent erosion. And then there's some passive recreation opportunities as well. So these are potential sites that could be addressed and are potential ways to help deploy $3 million. Lane, do you have any comments you want to make about some of these beach access priority one sites?
No.
Okay.
Actually, I should say just one. I apologize.
Oh.
The CMEX site, while it is a potential site, there is a settlement agreement between State Lands Commission, Coastal Commission, and the City of Marina, and it's providing for the long-term acquisition of that site by another nonprofit or governmental entity, and they will be doing a lot of the improvements to that site. And so even though it's listed here, we expect that when that property is acquired from CMEX, other entities will be responsible for making those improvements to that site.
Okay. Thank you. I know you've been around for 12 years, as you said, which is probably in some ways is almost how long has this issue been going on in the city? Maybe that was provide some context because it seems like you've been around for all of it.
It was from my first week at work is when this issue was brought up.
Okay, so you've been at it as long as you've been a city manager. This has been in your bailiwick, which means you know this issue inside and out. And I will play catch up with you this evening as we go through it. Let's go to the next slide. So some additional alternative priority one sites are the Loch Padden Park. And there's a whole list here on the screen. Vernal Pond Restoration. I'll read these off for the benefit of those that prefer audio. Vernal Pond Restoration, Trail System Improvements, Asian Gardens, Pollinator Garden, Urban Forest, Oak Woodland, Community Gardens, Bridge Over Pond, Recreation and Active Play Areas, and public facilities such as educational amphitheater, things of that nature. So these are additional like hard infrastructure improvements that can be done to a existing park in the community. And this park itself also falls within the coastal zone. Is that correct, Lane?
It is correct. It's an interesting park in that part is owned by the City of Marina, but part of it is owned by the Monterey Peninsula Regional Park District. And so the city has gone through a multiple public processes where we've defined some areas of improvements that we want to do with it. We have a meeting, a joint meeting scheduled with the Regional Park District on April 29th that will be, again, coordinating some of these potential improvements with the Monterey Peninsula Regional Park District.
Perfect. Thank you for that additional detail. All right. And then, so these are kind of priority one sites. They all fall within that coastal zone that we talk about, which is really the zone that the California Coastal Commission pays attention to and has jurisdiction over typically. And then let's go to the next slide. We've identified like what we call priority two sites. So these are outside the coastal zone. They deal with general facilities, park facilities, trails, restoration work that would fall outside that coastal zone, but also could benefit from capital support for funding those efforts to fix up and make changes, or to restore parks or build new parks or fix playground equipment of parks, what have you. And I think the reason we really, well, actually, we'll cover this in a second, but because we had a question on this specifically, but we definitely draw a distinction between those opportunities that are inside the coastal zone and those that are outside the coastal zone, because there's some questions that exist about where could that $3 million ultimately deployed, and is there a geographic limitation to where that money might be deployed? So with that, we'll go to the next slide because that really takes us to the gist of it. We've covered why we're here this evening. We want to talk about how to deploy $3 million if and only if that money ends up arriving to designed to be a benefit for the community of Marina. To the extent we want it to be a benefit for the community of Marina, the city has launched its own direct effort to talk to residents so we can gather feedback, educate and communicate with the public, and then assemble that content through the Marina City Council and convey that information to the California Coastal Commission as part of the city's effort to ensure that it's a for Marina by Marina effort and how those funds might be directed. With that, and then we've reviewed some of the potential sites. I should also be clear that tonight, although we're going to ask you to give us some specific feedback, we're not going to hold you limited to uh, any one of those ideas we surface, although we'd love your feedback about some of those. You may have some other great idea that we would like to encourage you to share with us as part of this process. And we can talk about that when we get into that feedback phase. But for now, I know that the community always has lots of questions about this process and what's going on. And I would like to just take a few moments to provide an opportunity for folks to ask their questions. So to that end, if you have questions you would like to ask, there is a Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, which you can click on and then go ahead and submit a question. And we will take your question and seek to answer it. I will also note that we did allow for pre-submission of questions prior to tonight's webinar in order to accommodate those who had questions ahead of time and maybe they warranted some additional research work on our part to be effective in answering. So for those folks, just know that we do have some questions that came in ahead of time that I would like to make sure we also ask. So go ahead and submit your questions if you have them at this time. I do have questions that came up already that was previously submitted. And Lane, I'd like to throw it to you to answer. The question is this: what is the entire Coastal Commission condition which describes the use of the $3 million? Can you highlight the condition that this money must be used in the Marina coastal zone?
And that's a very good question. When you look at condition 17, it doesn't specifically or explicitly state that it has to be in the coastal zone. However, the Coastal Commission's only review and only jurisdiction is in the coastal zone. And both the executive director and their staff that we've been working with have told us that they would expect that any amenities that are recommended be in the coastal zone. And so we know that that is confusing if the public is just strictly reading condition 17. It doesn't explicitly say that, but that is their only jurisdiction. It is not outside that.
So from your perspective, if we're submitting ideas to them that are more likely to be directed and they are more likely inclined to be supportive of project ideas that are in the coastal zone, is that a potential interpretation?
Absolutely. I think if we were to submit in our community engagement plan, say we wanted to make facility improvements or park improvements elsewhere in the city, and if someone else submitted ones in the coastal zone, they would accept those. Or even if only we submitted outside, they may reject that and say, no, we need amenities inside the coastal zone.
Okay, thank you for accepting my follow-on question on that. Different question: how are we assured that the city would even get the $3 million in funds? Is that I mean, obviously that's only going to happen if once they break ground on the construction, assuming that it's allowed to proceed forward?
Yeah, we're in litigation of that. We actually don't expect that we will ever see that 3 million. We have spent millions in the city in litigation protecting our groundwater and our vernal ponds and our wetland areas, and we fully expect that we will win that litigation and this plant will never be built.
And I guess maybe that is a kind of a follow-on question. I don't want to derail us from the focus of tonight, which is talk about how to allocate the 3 million. But there is ongoing litigation. So, and you never know how long litigation takes. But I assume you've been at this for a while and anticipate that litigation could go on for quite a while.
Yeah, we expect it will still continue on into 2026.
Okay. And then last, I guess maybe given your experience working with the California Coastal Commission, are you fairly convinced that they're going to listen to feedback from Marina on this issue or be interested in Marina's feedback?
Yeah, absolutely. We met directly with the executive director of the Coastal Commission, Dr. Kate Huckabridge, and we talked about some of these ideas, and we talked about our own engagement effort, and they strongly supported that. And they said they thought that'd be a great idea. And they said, absolutely, if the Marina City Council adopted a community engagement plan and submitted that, that would obviously take high priority as a document that they looked at. And as we talked over some of our ideas, like we talked over improvements to Lock Padden Park, And they said if that's in the coastal zone, they thought those would be great ideas, great projects.
Okay, great. I am not seeing any other questions being submitted, so I'm going to give it another 30 seconds for somebody to muster the courage to ask a question. Otherwise, I'm going to have us skip straight into our feedback session. So we'll enjoy some awkward silence together, Lane, while we wait for people to muster courage for a second, since we're running well on schedule at this point.
I think Ryder just means you've done a good job of answering the key questions.
Either that, or most of the folks have already had their questions answered in their prior efforts in research. I do see. We're just going to give it another minute, Smith. Okay. Oh, we did get a question. Thank you, Paul. So Paul asked a question about could we expand on the park proposal ideas? So why don't we go back to the park proposal slide, Sydney? And Lane, I'm going to, since you are Mr. Marina, I'm going to invite you to explain some of these concepts about what's involved with these.
Great. So our city council has been talking about Lock Padden Park for a long time. We have monies set aside, 250,000 initially for Asian Gardens. We've set aside 100,000 for improvements to our vernal pond there. We actually, on April 15th, will be taking another item back to our council on a scope of work to move forward with potentially improvements to the vernal pond, which will be short and long-term maintenance and long-term keeping the pond and everything associated with it healthy. The Asian garden, the concepts are continuing to move forward with that. We have an urban forest, oak woodland, and community gardens that has been really a Citizens for a Sustainable Marina project, but that has been going on for a while and that continues to expand. The master plan that the Monterey Peninsula Regional Park District has adopted, these are all elements in that master plan. Their master plan talks about trail system improvements and streams through there and recreational and active play areas. It talks about the amphitheater, talks about some facilities for teaching educational things about the environment and the health of the pond and the ecosystem and the importance of the different species down there. And so all those are in the master plan, and that's the meeting that our city council is having a joint meeting with the recreation or the Monterey Peninsula Parks and Recreation District to really tie down this master plan. And so timing actually is really good to get feedback on Lock Padden Park right now.
Great. Thank you for that detailed explanation on some of those options. I think there may be following questions or at least comments to be made as we invite folks to submit their feedback to us this evening. Let's go ahead. I'm not seeing any other questions. I'm going to give it another 15 seconds, just since Paul was kind enough to bravely ask the first question. Sometimes in my experience, somebody asks a question and somebody else will jump into the breach. Okay, we will move on. Let's go to the feedback phase. So in our feedback session, remember, our primary goal here is to hear from folks. We have lots of ways to do that. We have a form on the For Marina by Marina webpage that we launched where people can submit their feedback. We actually had a citywide mailer that just went out and should have probably arrived in most mailboxes today, not only talking about that page, but talking about an upcoming community workshop we have in person at City Hall next Saturday. But on the page, we have a series of questions you can go to essentially type your own words and submit your own direct feedback. We'll be taking that content verbatim to the city council as part of our package of materials that we produce on the public engagement phase. But we'd also love to hear the sound of your voice. My hope is that if you would like to make verbal comments, you can go ahead and use the hand raise feature, and we will encourage you to then make your comments about the various questions we have that we're raising, or some other idea you may have about how to allocate the $3 million. I will just remind you that ideally your feedback is going to be focused upon if and when that $3 million should be triggered. How will it best be deployed for the benefit of the city of Marina? That is the real intent behind the questions we are seeking to answer this evening. The intent is not necessarily to litigate the merits of the desalination plant. Lane, as a employee of the city, has made clear his job is to follow council directive, which is to oppose the desalination plant, and he's had 12 years now working hard to oppose the desalination plant, given his history at the city. All right. So once you raise your hand, we will unmute you, and then we'll give you a chance to talk, and we'll have a nice conversation. Others in the community will be able to hear it. It'll be recorded, and we'll also take some notes on our end about that. Okay. So let's go to the next slide, because I think we got a question coming up here. All right. So the first question is, what are your top priorities for a coastal access and amenities plan? So fundamentally, what would you like to see made possible as a coastal access and amenities plan? And I want to thank our brave first question that was raised. Paul, let's go ahead and unmute you, Paul. We'd love to hear your voice. Go ahead and unmute yourself. You there, Paul?
Am I on?
You are. You're on, Paul. You're live with Ryder and Lane.
Thank you. Specifically, I'm in my 80s and I have mobility problems. And right now, with the state beach, mobility impaired people just can't get down to the beach. Will the plan specifically address access for mobility impaired people to the beachfront?
Did you hear that question, Lane?
Yeah, that is, Paul, that is a great question, and that is really good feedback that we would like to consider as we put together in our plan. What we're doing right now on a different area, the Fort Ord Dune State Park, which is owned by State Parks, the city has received an $800,000 grant from the State Coastal Conservancy, and we're doing that exactly right now to work on a plan to provide access to the beach for the mobility impaired. And that 800,000 right now is just going through the permitting process and the design process. The State Coastal Conservancy has told us once we get through that design and permitting process, then we'll go back to them for actually funding those improvements, and those will be millions of dollars to do that. But we're exactly working on that, because you're correct. We do not have any flat surface that anyone that has mobility issues, if you have families with small kids, you're pushing a stroller, if you have ADA issues, that is a huge deficit in our city. And so that is the type of feedback that we really want to hear.
Yeah, that was really excellent, specific, Paul. I really appreciate you sharing that. Do you have any other thoughts about top priorities in the coastal access area and amenity plans? You still with us, Paul? Paul may have accidentally entered. You still there, Paul?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Do you have any other ideas you'd like to share?
You've covered my points.
Okay.
As long as we're doing it in an environmentally sound way, getting access to the beach for people who have the problems described is, I think, very important.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you, Paul. I appreciate it. Thanks for being a trailblazer tonight. Anybody else on the call would like to raise their hand and offer a comment about their top priorities for the coastal access and amenities plan? Don't be shy. We're all going to test our experience with awkward silence this evening. Okay. I feel like, Lane, I've given sufficient opportunity to comment on that. So let's move to the next question. So our next question is, of the priority one sites that were shared, which are most important to you? And for your benefit of kind of edification, we brought that slide back up just to make it easier for you to kind of lock on to those sites. So it's pretty simple. Like, tell us which of these sites matter to you and why. Give us a little bit of feedback. Feel free to raise your hand and we will call on you and give you a chance to unmute yourself and make comment.
And Ryder, maybe while we're waiting for comment, I can stimulate some thoughts.
Please.
With the Dunes Drive site, if people are familiar with that, at the end of Dunes Drive, there's just a cul-de-sac turnaround. You can park there, but there's no designated parking. Then you have a rather long walk on sand down a trail to the beach, and it's probably less than a quarter mile, but it's a good long walk. And if you're mobility impaired, that's not an access point. And so potentially that could be an access point that we'd try to improve. The problem with that area is the coastal erosion. And so if we tried to build a boardwalk or a flat surface that is could help the mobility impaired, we're constantly fighting coastal erosion and the dunes blowing on it. And that might be a little challenging for that site. But that's kind of the options we have available with that site. Down at Lake Court, we have the same thing. There's actually a couple little sites. When you first go down to Lake Court, we used to call it the old ladder, and it's not, there's a parking area, but it's not yet paved or striped out. But you can walk there and you can walk up the backside of these sand dunes across the top and then drop down to the beach. And so one thought is, do we want to make any improvements to parking there? If you go down to the very end where the homes are back there, there is a old path that goes up to the top of the sand dunes that is breaking down. It used to be asphalt, and that's a potential idea to improve that path all the way to the top of the sand dunes and maybe improve it a little bit as you go through the sand dunes as it drops down to the beach, and maybe improve the public parking a little bit in that area. And that would be the thoughts with that. I previously talked about CMEX, that there's a lot you could do there, but I think it's the third party really has those responsibilities and they take care of that site, and it doesn't make sense to allocate our 3 million to that site. Then Loch Padden Park is kind of the jewel in the center of our community, and those previous ideas that we talked about, that would be a lot of different types of improvements. Improving our trail system around there to make it better for the mobility impaired, make ADA improvements. We talked about the master plan for the site talks about a bridge across the pond, and that would again be accessible to all, and that would open up views of the pond and the whole park. And so Loch Padden Park is really, it's a major effort to really make that, improve that park, clean it up, invest a lot. And really 3 million doesn't go very far. I talked about it's 800,000 just to go through the permitting process for the Fort Ernst Dunes. When we're looking at restoring the ponds at Loch Padden Park, we're probably looking at anywhere from $500,000 to $700,000-800,000 just to go through our permitting process. And so 3 million isn't a whole lot, but it's a start. And I think that's the important of trying to get feedback on really what are the important issues and where the community thinks we can get the most bang for our buck.
Yeah, and I think one other thing that I think is always helpful to put in context is $3 million compared to, say, the general fund for the city, right? And the general fund for the city is essentially it's the regular budget of funds that are available for the day-to-day operations and investment and infrastructure in the city for the most part. And the general fund for the city is what in Marina, Lane?
Our operating budget is about 34 or $35 million annually.
Yeah. So this 3 million would be about 10% of 1 year of your revenue. So 10% of your revenue as a city is significant. It is a one-time number. So you can't really invest that in operations. It goes into infrastructure. But that at least gives you a sense of the significance of that $3 million. It's why you would like to make sure that if the funds are going to be deployed, you'd like them to be deployed in an effective manner for the benefits of the residents. All right. I am not seeing anybody come up with their hands despite your excellent inspirational summary of the various options, again evidencing your 12 years of veteran status in the city, which is eminently helpful. Oh, I see a hand arise. All right, let's Galia, are you there? You're off mute on our end, I think. Ethan? Yeah, talking is permitted. Galia, are you there?
Yeah, I hope it's working now.
Oh, it's working now. Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. I wanted to say that I really sympathize with Paul about the lack of access to the beach. I visit the beach a lot, and I am really perplexed about how you can build any access road to the beach because of the situation with the dunes. Everywhere that you go, from the Cemex plant all the way down to Lake Drive, it's all the dunes are moving constantly. And it's a non-stop battle against erosion. Even today, if you go to the beach, you see the parking lot is falling into the ocean. And it's the work on it was done not too long ago, and again, it needs to work to be fixed. For this reason, I would love to see work done on the pond. The pond is a beautiful asset for the town, and we really can see it. It's filthy, it's polluted, and we don't really enjoy it. So since we get this very little money to work on something, I think maybe if we invest it in something that can be seen quickly and give some immediate satisfaction to the people that walk around, even tourists who stay in a lot of the hotels nearby, we can at least have something to show for, because anything that you do on the beach will be wiped out very quickly. That's mainly my point. Thank you.
That's helpful. I appreciate you raising that point. And so how long have you lived in Marina to witness the changing oceanfront?
6 years.
Very nice.
And I go very often, and I walk down under the freeway. It's filthy, it's disgusting, it's not a nice walk. I constantly ask when we can organize a cleaning group. I did participate in one, and but I'm told it belongs to the California Highway or something other.
Caltrans.
It's not ours, so we don't really clean there. So it's really not a pleasant walk to the beach. So if we can do something small there, at least to reach the parking lot that is constantly falling into the ocean, that would be nice.
Yeah.
But I don't have any idea how to do that.
Yeah.
Well, that's a really good point that you bring up, and I think that kind of is a second point in that we are completely renovating our Gloria Jean Tate Park right now, and one of the things that we can look at is trying to improve the access from that park there to the Marina Dunes in State Beach, and as you said, it goes under Highway 1, and so there are definitely some complications there. but that can definitely be something that we can look at.
And one more thing, in the trail from Lake Drive, I think you really need to be in good shape to do this. You don't even need to be, I mean, even people that are not in great shape can do it because it is extremely steep. And those stairs also keep breaking. So at least if it can be maintained in some way or another, that would be nice. But as I say, very small. I don't know how many people really use this access trail. But as I say, I'm looking to, when I see some amount of money given to the city, I want the most people that can enjoy something like that. So I think that more people will notice a cleanup of the pond than fixing the trail in Lake Drive. Thank you.
Well, and you raised an important point there, which is maximizing the benefit to the most number of people in the community as a principle you're raising, which is
Oh, yes, yes. I always try to think what you call it. Yeah. The
um,
priority is to as many people that can enjoy something.
yeah,
That's what I want.
yeah. And to be clear, when you were referring to the pond to clean up, that's the pond at Loch Padden, correct?
Yeah, the Lock Paddle Park.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure I was clear about that. My
The
note taker
cleanup,
was,
yeah, the cleanup and the bridge, that would be fantastic.
yeah. I appreciate your recognizing at least the point that Caltrans at some point controls these major highways that go through communities. This is a big problem with cities all across California where they have jurisdiction and cities are in sometimes cases prevented from even doing cleanup in those areas because it's not their property. And if something bad happens on that property and it's Caltrans property, it creates a real problem. So um, it's a constant tussle that exists between city governments and their friends at Caltrans.
Yeah.
So
Well,
I
we,
think,
we were a bunch of neighbors that just went and did it. It was not an official group.
It was a little vigilante cleanup. That's
Exactly.
I can neither I endorse that nor oppose it. I will just acknowledge it.
All right.
so
uh, Go
I
ahead,
think,
Lane.
Peter, one other thing that she'd mentioned that we didn't write it down there, she talked about these stairs going up the ladder, that they are breaking and broken. I think she said if those could be fixed, that would be helpful too.
Okay. We have note takers in the back that are hanging on your every word, team. So I appreciate that. All right, Golia, as we go through these questions, I hope you come back. That was really excellent feedback. I appreciate it. Does anybody else have a point or suggestion they'd like to raise around their priorities for these priority one sites that we've identified? Just throw your hand up if you'd like to share. Okay. Let's move on to our next question. Question 3. Of the beach access sites, which are top priority and what types of amenities would you like to see? At the risk of putting words in the mouth of Paul or Galia, I would presume beach access itself and accessibility for people who are not as mobile would probably be on that list, but would be great to hear for you to confirm that that's an interpretation of this particular question. But anything else would also be appreciated. So feel free to throw your hand up and confirm the points if you made them before, or offer some additional insights. And Paul, I see you with your hand up. Thank you so much. We'll unmute you. You can unmute yourself and you can let loose with your idea. You there, Paul?
Am I there?
You're back, buddy.
Okay.
Awesome.
Basically, the mobility access is in terms of not just old people, but people with strollers. It's impossible. Now, whether it can be done in a way where it's sustainable over time, I don't know. That's a design issue for a bunch of civil engineers and a bunch of other people. But to the extent that we can improve the access for our populace, it would certainly be something that would be appreciated. Uh, the other question I had on the Loch Padden um, is the pollinator garden idea is intriguing to me because I'm a native plant person, but there's a garden already up by the library. Uh, And would that interact in the design process?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, those pollinator gardens and those community gardens and oak woodlands, those are already been under development for years and are going to continue to develop and grow there.
So they are, I guess, to Paul, did that answer your question? They are connected?
Yeah,
Okay.
that covers it.
Okay. Great. Thanks, Paul. And an interesting point you raised about the durability of whatever's engineered for the beach access and how long that survives, and perhaps raising the question of who maintains it over time, right? So those are reasonable questions to raise. It'd be a shame to do a big project and then 2 years later the dunes wipe it away. It's a balancing act. All right. Anybody else have a comment that they would like to make? Okay. Let's go to our next question for the evening. And just a reminder for those folks that are online, like you can submit your questions. You can submit feedback through an online form as well. So let's go to, actually go back one slide, Sydney, just real quick. So just in case it inspires anybody, these were the access points. And I apologize, I should have brought this up before. These are the access points that we were specifically referring to. So in seeing this list, does it inspire anybody to have a question or comment they want to make about these beach access sites? And I'll give that another 30 seconds too, or at least 15 seconds. And you can just raise your hand. Let me just check with my engineer 1 second on something. Okay. So anybody, I'm not seeing any hands go up on this. All right. I drug it out long enough. We'll go to the next slide then. So question 4 we're asking this evening, which improvements to Loch Padden Park are most important to you? Which would you like to see funding prioritized for? So now we're just going to narrow down on Loch Padden. If we were only going to focus there, what we would like to see. And we have I believe our next slide enumerates some of those options. Yep. So now it's back on your screen. If we were going to focus on those areas, and we heard about fixing up the pond restoration. We've heard some comments about the pollinator garden. I'm curious if there are more thoughts either from the folks that have already spoken or from some other timid soul who would like to unmute themselves and share their ideas this evening. If you would love to join us for the conversation, I'd appreciate it. But I'd love to hear about your thoughts on which of these areas are priorities and why they're priorities for you. Just go ahead and raise your hand and we'll unmute you and give you a chance to talk. I am not seeing any hands shoot up at this time. And Lane, you already did a phenomenal job summarizing these, so I'm not going to ask you to provide any more play-by-play. I'll just note for the record of our recording that we did have one particular comment from Paul about the pollinator gardens being his interest, and another one from Galia concerning the vernal pond restoration being an area of interest for her. All right, we'll go to what I believe is our final question for the evening, which is if the 3 million could go outside of the coastal zone, what facilities, recreational opportunities, or restoration projects would you prioritize? And again, for full disclosure, we have some concerns that potentially the California Coastal Commission is not super excited about projects that are outside their jurisdiction, which means outside the coastal zone. But nonetheless, because we want to make sure we hear from everybody and we don't want any rock to go unturned, we wanted to at least float this question in the community. So if you're thinking about space outside of that coastal zone, what other ideas might come to mind that you would like to share with us this evening? And again, just throw your hand up if you want to ask a question. There's a little raise hand feature on the bottom of your screen. You can click raise hand and we can go from there. I'll also note for the record while we're recording, Pat, I appreciate your comment about, you also commented on Lock Patton Park and the benefit of cleaning it up. And that you also agreed with some of the comments that were made by a couple of our two other speakers. So thank you, Pat, for submitting that in writing. And for those that are wondering, Pat submitted that as if she were asking a question and she just made the comment. Any other, anybody have any other thoughts about how else we might spend $3 million outside that local coastal zone? Are we going to do an ice hockey rink, Lane? Is that the plan?
We are building an indoor sports and aquatic center, and we have money allocated towards that. We're very excited about that.
That's exciting. That's a huge amenity for the community, certainly. All right, I'm not seeing any additional hands shoot up wanting to express themselves on this point. So I will, rather than belabor it. Oh, we did get, let me just make sure oh, excellent. Okay, so we have a question come in, Lane, that I want to be responsive to from one of our rock star contributors this evening. So a question was asked, where does the coastal zone end? And I know we were just having a conversation about that before we got on the call. So this might be a question for you, and maybe Guido can back you up too.
Yeah, let's go to Guido on that.
Guido, you still with us? There he is.
I am here. It's defined in our coastal act. It's about 1 mile from the nautical high tide. So that's generally how it's defined. And we have I can show you a map if you give me access. Actually, you have the map up, right, already.
We do. So, Sydney, if you could go all the way back to the map with the blue edge in it, I believe that indicates where that coastal zone is. So that is about 1 mile inland, right? And what we're seeing on the screen, Guido?
That's correct. That's correct.
And there's some parts that appear to be carved out. So there's this funky little blue blip that comes in, and then there's this long sliver. I assume that long sliver is because that other land right there is outside the city limits.
That's correct. That's correct.
Okay, so that lower left chunk is not in city limits, and therefore it's not in the city's local coastal plan. And then can you explain the little in the middle there on the right, the bunt out that seems to go further inland than the other parts?
Yeah, that actually we're getting clarification from Coastal Commission. We're actually updating our LCP. So some of these maps, because the Coastal Act got adopted in 76, 77. So there's a little bit of, trying to rely on these older maps.
Mm-hmm.
But it's that one, that little hole there is a little confounding, actually. So, yeah. So
it'd be that little hole, and it would be the why it goes out further. If they're generally about 1 mile from the shore, why it goes out even further for that one section would be a kind of a question mark. So we're still working through a clarity on that.
Yeah, we're actually updating our LCP right now. So it's kind of a question mark. So
okay.
But what I can tell you is that part where it kind of sticks out, that's where Lock Patton Park is.
Okay.
And so this was a vernal pond wetlands area, and some of those areas where you see it go outside. We have 7 to 8 vernal ponds and wetlands areas, and that may have been why years back when those maps were drawn, it might have tried to include those areas. Whether or not that's within their jurisdiction, we'll figure that out as we update our LCP this year.
It's the dynamic world of Coastal Commission issues and politics and policy, but my friends. Okay. Let's go back all the way to our final question, just to give it one final test of our audience here. Does anybody have any question or any feedback they'd like to offer? How else they might want to allocate $3 million outside of the coastal zone? Any projects come to mind? Any crazy idea you want to float? Any slightly less crazy idea you want to float? We're welcome to hear it. It's a safe space. Okay, I see a hand up. My good friend, Paul.
Well, I got to get my Ori in one more time.
No problem.
Lock Padden suddenly becomes not a part of the coastal zone, uh, I would be very upset if it was then prescribed from being able to be funded through these $3 million simply because of an administrative change in the boundaries. So uh, it just, it's strange when there's a piece there, and I understand why it's there historically, but our vernal ponds are an integral part of our water system, and they're very important. Uh, Most people don't understand it, but we don't have a stormwater system other than our ponds because they absorb the runoff. Uh, and so to me, they're as an important a part of the coastal zone as any of the rest of it. So that's my shot.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. I see Lane agreeing with you and shaking his head.
Absolutely. We'll have very in-depth discussions with the Coastal Commission on that issue exactly.
Yeah. But it's a really insightful question to raise about that as well, in terms of, therefore, what implication does it have for Lock Podden being considered? So thank you, Paul. I appreciate that. Insightful. All right. That's a tough act to follow, but does anybody else have a question or comment they want to make about this? Okay. I'm going to bring us home in for the duration. Just a reminder, we've been recording this, and so we will be, in the name of transparency and also to inspire your fellow residents to be involved, we'll make this recording available on the city's website under our For Marina by Marina page that we've launched on the city website. Right now, it's important for you to help us out. We really want to make sure we're getting community participation in this process in a very open and transparent fashion. We are coming to City Hall on Saturday on March 29th at 10 a.m. We'll be there for up to 2 hours. If it goes faster, we'll go faster. Just like tonight, we went for an hour instead of an hour and a half. But the goal will be to bring neighbors together in Marina and talk about the future of Marina and how we can, if and only if this $3 million does come to pass, how can we best deploy it and advocate for you as residents of Marina? So please tell your friends, share it on social media. I'm coming up to Marina for a nice big crowd, and I've always had great experiences up there meeting folks from Marina, and I'm hoping you bring your best, because I'm looking forward to seeing a bunch of folks up there. Lane will be there, Guido will be there, Peter on my team will be there, and I'll be there, and we would love to come talk with you and have a nice community conversation. And you might make some new Marina friends, which is always a great thing to do with civic engagement. In addition to that, on Saturday, we have a online form that's available for you to fill out through April 4th. It's at the cityofmarina.org/For Marina by Marina web page that we put together. That form is really designed to help guide through some of the very questions we asked this evening and to get some tranched feedback of information that will help us out immensely. We've already gotten several submissions today as a result, we believe, of the mailers arriving in the mailboxes of residents. And we would love to see many more, right? The more of that we have, the better we can do, the better your city council can do advocating for you as a community. So this is really a great opportunity to participate in governance and engage with your city council and your city staff to advocate for your community. We do cut those off on the 4th because we need to put a bunch of information in front of the city council and then package that up for the California Coastal Commission. So at some point we do have to have a cutoff. So we're going to go a few days past our workshop that we have this weekend, and then we're going to have to bring it to a close so we can consolidate all our information. And then that really is going to show up at a report that's going to go on the agenda on April 15th for the city council meeting. We are in that timing because we want the council to consider that feedback that evening and then take appropriate action to formally pass it along to the California Coastal Commission. Lane, do you have any comments you want to make about that process that evening? We obviously can't presume the outcome, but the methodology at least.
No, I think you've covered it very, very well, Ryder. The public will have a ability to comment on it at the April 15th City Council meeting, and based on the public comment and the information that we present the council, they'll give some final direction, and we'll put that in our final community engagement plan, and we'll submit that directly to the Coastal Commission.
Great. Okay. All right, that's it for the rest of the show. Do you have any other closing comments you want to make, Lane, before I bring us home?
No, other than, we had not a ton of people, but the comments that we received were great. It was very helpful, very pointed, and very focused, to where I think it will be really beneficial for us. We didn't get let's fix roads and let's fix things that really doesn't help us a lot. So I really want to thank those members of the public who attended, and those comments really were thoughtful and very helpful. It's like, just really thank you again.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate how staff and the council have been so interested in the community's involvement in the process and ensuring every resident has a chance for their voice to be heard. I always, again, appreciate coming back into Marina. I look forward to being in Monterey this weekend with you, and Monterey Bay, I should say, to be specific about it. And although we won't be in the bay, we'll be on the shore. We'll be on land. We'll just be bay adjacent. I look forward to being bay adjacent with you this weekend, Lane. And Guido, thanks for chiming in as well. Appreciate you joining us this evening. Thank you to the rest of the Trappi Smith team that joined me. And with that, we'll end our recording. You guys have a great night. Be safe out there, Marina. Have a great evening.